Commercial listings for agents. How to get your next commercial listing in 30 days or less. I'm Christian Peter, author. For years, I've seen brokers struggling, and I've always wanted to write a book to help them. I know how hard it is to get a foothold in commercial real estate. I came into brokerage with nearly 15 years of knowledge of commercial development, leasing, and property management. However, I still struggled at first with learning the pathway to success. Commercial real estate brokerage seemed sort of like a secret society that no one wanted to let me into. When I meet for the first time with my students, they're usually in the same boat. They're usually unaware of where they should go to learn about commercial real estate, as there are no real outlets in the market to learn everything. Across the board, they know what they need to learn to list properties instead of working whatever lease and buyer opportunities come their way, but they just don't know how to take listings. What they do know, though, is that as a result, they're losing hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential commissions by not knowing how to list commercial properties. Solving those problems really is the genesis of our program. We help brokers take back control of their financial life and more transactions and larger ones to their pipeline. And from just a few transactions a year, put away an extra $75,000+ annually. Now, you won't have to wonder how to seek out every lucrative opportunity and what to do once you get your foot in the door. My hope for you is that after reading this book, you'll be inspired to start taking more commercial listings and closing more deals. It's my sincere wish to give you the skills, knowledge, and confidence to break you into commercial real estate sales and to show you the pathway to get the job done correctly. And there's only 3 key steps you'll need to master, and you'll be off to the races. Once you get these steps under your belt, the sky is the limit. To your continued success, Christian. Chapter 1, Breaking into the Commercial Secret Society. As of the writing of this book, a couple of major events have occurred in the commercial real estate market. Interest rates have dropped precipitously, things have slowed to a grinding halt when COVID pandemic came about, so the government dropped interest rates to bring people into the market, and this brought a deluge of buyers with them. Now, a lot of agents have been struggling in bidding wars because there's so many buyers in the market, and so much inventory that sat on the market during COVID had been absorbed by ravenous buyers. So commercial buyers agents all complain that there is no inventory out there, and what is out there is being priced outside of their clients' budgets. At the same time on the commercial side, where opportunities are really starting to present themselves now. Stores and restaurants have either downsized or are working at partial capacity, temporarily closed, or even closed for good. So now what we're seeing post-COVID is we're absolutely going to see more of, because we saw this in 2008, and it's a number of empty retail spaces and a few office buildings and landlords that have a fair amount of space unoccupied. But what we aren't seeing is a lot of people using office and retail space the way they used to. Many commercial agents that were required by their brokerage to specialize in only one property type or another are feeling the pressure of not enough inventory and not enough business to go around in their area of specialization. This is nothing new. What I teach flies in the face of what we call commonly accepted principles. Now, in brokerage, but more on that later. There's a whole lot of opportunity. Conventional brokerage wisdom dictates that you pick one property type, be it multifamily, industrial, retail, or office, draw a circle or rectangle around a certain geographical area, and for you to learn every owner and tenant in that area, learn about every transaction that occurred, and become the area expert, air quotes. That sounds good, and that made perfectly logical sense if this was 1995. Now, a lot of that dogma came from brokerages that have a dozen or more agents, and they don't want everyone fighting over the same owners and properties and opportunities and so forth. So naturally, they made a clear defined line of all the types of properties that you are allowed to work on. Now, I spent the first 10 years of my career doing office and industrial leasing. So I knew the property type well, and remember being chastised publicly in a meeting by my then broker that if I was a industrial guy, what was I doing with an office buyer? It never made sense to me. Knowledge is knowledge, right? Can a grocer only sell apples? Or should he give business away just because he doesn't want to step on someone's toes that wants to sell oranges? Just didn't add up. So think about this. What if you weren't limited to just one property type? What if you became knowledgeable on 2 or 3 or even 4? How much more opportunity would there be out there for you? What if, by the new opportunities that expanding your scope created, you decided to focus solely on listing and selling properties? What then? Can you picture, just for a minute, how much more money your business can earn if it didn't matter what property type came along because you were equipped to handle all of them? That is my recommendation to all of you. Become knowledgeable on multiple property types and focus only on representing sellers. Period. Your broker might not like this, but I promise you, your banker will. Okay, now that I have your attention, let's talk about some of the hurdles in getting there. Breaking into the secret society. I wish I had a nickel for every time one of my students mentioned what a secret society commercial real estate is. In fact, they all say, no commercial agent wants to share their knowledge. They just want to help them with their first transaction and take 50% of the commission, and that's after the brokerage house takes 40 to 50%. One agent I spoke to did the math, and at the end of the day, when she closes a transaction, she brings home 15 cents on the dollar after paying the brokerage their cut and the other broker in her company that assisted her in the deal that she procured his cut, and some other mysterious marketing fees that the brokerage charges. It's pretty hard to get out from under that earning structure. No wonder why there's a 95% failure rate in the first year in the business and a 97% failure rate in the second year of commercial brokerage business. The deck is stacked against new brokers, and on top of that, the veteran brokers rarely want to share their knowledge. Now, I believe this really stems from a place of scarcity. A friend of mine who used to work on Wall Street and left to work in real estate brokerage told me, I thought stock brokerage was cutthroat. He said it's absolutely nothing compared to real estate brokerage. Now, he works on the residential side, and on the residential side, there are a lot more transactions and a lot more people in need of your help. I mean, if you think about it, everyone needs a roof over their head, so realtors have the ability to service most of the general public. Conversely, on the commercial side, getting back to the whole scarcity issue, there are far fewer transactions. As a result, they are far larger as well. I read a statistic not too long ago from a study done in 2015, and the National Association of Realtors said that the average size of a commercial deal across the U.S. was $1.9 million. Now compare that to the median home price across the U.S. When I was researching for this book, it was $226,000. Now, if you consider the average commercial transaction is 8 times the size of the average residential transaction, you can see why there's more of a scarcity mindset. If there are fewer transactions, and they're oftentimes a far larger dollar volume. So if you look at the money, you can make the same amount of money with just one transaction that you can with 8 on the residential side. So there's a whole lot more reason for agents not to want to share their knowledge. There's a whole lot more reasons for agents to say, oh, no, that's too difficult for you to handle. Let's work on it together and we'll split it. Secret society equals fear and selfish society. Commercial real estate agents can be motivated to cut people out of deals, to go around a listing broker and go directly to the owner, and all other kinds of, unfortunately, underhanded moves. After all, there are far fewer transactions and people are more attached to each individual one. For instance, if you had 50 deals that you're working on versus 2, which one are you going to be more attached to? The 1 out of 50 or the 1 out of 2? I rest my case. I personally had this issue as a new broker trying to learn commercial. I was working for the first time at a brokerage business, and I was a junior broker on a team, and the senior broker had an arrangement with the owner of the company that he was going to receive a referral for every transaction that I closed. Suffice to say, there was an obvious financial incentive for this person to help me with the growth of my business and career and so forth. Now, I was there for about a year, and it seemed like every time I wanted to talk business, this person wanted to talk about anything other than business. No matter how many times I tried to open up conversations, I just couldn't get them to help me. Finally, frustrated, I wound up finding another opportunity at another company, and I took it. The day I left, they asked why I was leaving. I said, do you really want to know honestly? They said, yeah. I said, honestly, I felt that I wanted to be supported in my progress and that the senior broker actually admitted that he played it close to the vest because I'm, in a sense, competition. They didn't want to really teach me everything that they knew and show me the tricks of the trade because they were viewing me as future competition. Now, even with a financial incentive, they still didn't want to teach me. When people talk about the secret society, I totally get it because at that brokerage business, I had someone who was literally going to benefit from my success financially and still refused to help me. Catherine's story. Catherine's a perfect example. This is a tough business to break into for a number of reasons. Basically, as I mentioned before, on the residential side, everyone you know, everyone you talk to at the grocery store, everyone you see at church walking down the street, all need a roof over their heads. Every human being on earth, in a sense, is a potential client. But in commercial, you need to know exactly where to go to find clients. You just can't run into them at the water fountain or at Starbucks. On top of that, commercial properties are a bit different from residential in that they're very specialized. Whereas, everyone grew up in an apartment or a house or a condo. So in a sense, you kind of understand the property type intuitively. You know what a kitchen looks like, bathroom, attic, basement, master bedroom, what have you. Commercial properties are an entirely different animal. You need to have a resource to learn about them. On top of that fact, there are very few resources to learn, and more importantly, there are very few people willing to guide you. And it's pretty obvious why there's a high failure rate in the first year for people who are looking to learn commercial. What I see over and over again is a lack of mentors. The information is not very organized, and in fact, it's quite disorganized in terms of where you go to find it. Now, you can find it there, but the question is, how far and how long do you have to search? And is the information even accurate? The deal cycles, or time it takes from the first meeting until you close a transaction with a client and actually get paid, are significantly longer in commercial real estate than residential. Oftentimes in commercial companies or brokerage companies, the training is just flat out insufficient. Catherine, one of my students, was experiencing several of these common hardships in her first year. She was working in a company that was not aligned with her long-term goals. In fact, she was getting pressure from her broker to go chase after these monster deals because they wanted her to do the legwork and then step in once she hooked the big fish. Well, she was all over the place with absolutely no business plan. It was just, here's a phone number, go out, reach out to this person. Here's a phone number, go out, reach out to that person. Dogs chasing school buses. I watched her for the better part of a year, just beating her head against the wall. I swear, if I told her once, I told her 1,000 times. Stop chasing the huge deals. In a kind way, I said, listen, it's like a dog chasing a school bus. Even if it caught the school bus, it wouldn't be able to drive it, so what's the point? I helped her implement a better business plan, and I became her mentor. Once she made a few changes to her business plan, she got into a company that didn't stand in her way. She started working on the right things, and she was absolutely off to the races. In fact, in the 6 months since she and I started working together on a regular basis, she closed 8 deals. Now compare that with her first year plus in the business at another company, and she didn't even close a single one. Not one. The key takeaway is that it wasn't until she put 3 important pieces into place that she actually saw results. The company, which I recommended she change, the mentor, me, and a business plan. The first one was obviously up to her, but I wasn't able to assist her on the other 2. This brings me to the next subject, which is the bridge between being a leasing and buyer agent and a listing agent. And that's what we're going to do and handle in chapter 2, is the bridge between leasing buyer agent and listing agent. Chapter 2. Now, what is the bridge between leasing and buyer agent and a listing agent? And do most agents know about it? For the most part, most agents do not know about the bridge. I believe it's my invention. I call it the bridge method. Now, I haven't heard of it before, but when I started really considering the differences between a leasing and buying agent and listing agents, it all came together. Now, I'm very visually oriented, and the way I describe it to people is visual. Suppose you think about a real estate as a piece of land with a leasing and buyer representation on one side, a river in the middle, and listing agents on the other side. There's a bridge that links the 2 land masses together, and that bridge has 8 distinct pieces, 8 stops along the way, if you will. In any commercial transaction, a leasing and buying agent, they already know 8 of those distinct pieces that comprise the bridge. Now, that's why, in my estimation, leasing and buying agents are a lot easier to teach because they already have many of the skills needed. Now, here's another visual for you. The bridge is us creating a framework around what we already know. With a framework of knowledge, having a mentor show you what steps to take, it's simply like walking across a bridge, which is easier, softer way. Doing it without the bridge framework and trying to do it by yourself is like using the slippery stepping stones in a river that sometimes has rapids. It's easy to miss a rock, screw it up, and end up 100 miles downstream. Personally, crossing a bridge with a mentor is much faster and far less disastrous. Now here's the thing. Most people on the other side, the members of that commercial secret society we talked about, most likely took that same slippery stepping stones approach across the rapids. And that's probably what has a lot to do with nobody wanting to make it easy for you. It was so difficult to traverse for them, so why would they go ahead and share their knowledge? I think there's a little bit of ego wrapped up in that. You know, I had to grit it out on my way through. Why should I make it easier on you? It's like the old saying goes, I'm on the ship now, raise the game plan. I made it here, we're not helping anybody else. Now, valuation is a slippery stone. One of the main ways an agent could screw up and end up 100 miles downstream could be valuation. If you would think about it, if you have the most beautiful property in the most beautiful submarket, it has a sign out front and it's absolutely amazing, but it's priced 2 times what the market's willing to bear, you are never, ever going to sell it. You're asking $30 for a $20 bill. It doesn't make any sense and you'll never get it. That happens to be one of the pillars in the program that I teach. It goes back to the 8 skills that the bridge method that I mentioned. Leasing and buying agents don't know how much they already know about what's going on the listing side. If they've only closed 1 transaction in their career, they've already exercised 5 of these skills. Here's what I mean. If you've sold as little as 1 commercial property or leased as little as 1 commercial property, you already know how to prospect and generate leads, or else you wouldn't have sold the property. You already know how to nurture relationships and follow up with them. You already know how to close transactions. You already know how to deal with inspection periods. You already know how to write up a contract and do the requisite paperwork, and so forth. So there are only 3 things missing. That's what my program teaches. Leasing and buying agents interested in commercial real estate sales. What we do is we go in depth on just those 3 essential pieces because they already have more than half of what's necessary. Pushing on the pull door. When you're looking at the transformation from leasing and buying agent to commercial listing broker as a bridge, you're able to streamline the process of making the crossover. If you're doing it all by yourself and just trying to hodgepodge your way through it, lots of times you'll do a process in 5 steps when it could be done in 2. That's the beauty of a bridge framework. It streamlines your success. If you think about it, you could spend all your time knocking on the wrong doors. Have you ever seen that comic where the guy is trying to pull on the push door instead of pushing it, right? It's the same thing. If you're pushing on the pull door, you're never going to get in. Sometimes it's just as simple as someone telling you the right way of doing something. It'll make your life so much easier because you can never get back the time that you spent spinning your wheels. There are no points for doing something the hard way, certainly not in real estate. Killing your enthusiasm slowly. This is a story of a friend once told me. She said, "This is probably a strong word, but I feel this from my soul because I've been in sales and but it's really a travesty when you get someone into a company or a profession who's gung-ho, on fire, excited to get in there, do the best they can, and be the best that there is. They prepare to be the best, they study like heck, they grow their knowledge and their experience, but they're not given a framework or guideline, and they expel so much energy for so many years. Even a blind squirrel can find a nut occasionally, but it's the massive cost to their soul, expending all that energy only to get halfway there. Now, if they had a mentor while they still had all that energy and excitement, it could get them all the way across the finish line. Massive energy directed inefficiently equals massive loss of opportunity. I think my friend hit the nail right on the head. Travesty is not too harsh of a word. People come into sales full of fire and ready to really make a change and make a difference in their lives and the lives of others. At the end of the day, they wind up spinning their wheels and getting nowhere and getting frustrated and coming up against all these dead ends. Frankly, that's how I approached building the curriculum from that mindset. I said to myself, what's the one resource that I wish I had when I sat down my very first day and tried to list my first commercial property? When I put my laptop down, what do I wish I could open up and access? I took it step by step, everything you need to know from A to Z, because I know what it's like to feel that fire but not know how to get there. That's exactly why I created my coaching program the way I did, with that person in mind who's ready to go, fired up, but just needs the know-how, not just the what. A lot of people will tell you the what, but what they don't tell you is the how. Now, the how is equally important, even if not more so important. I think a key point for this chapter is that you're not that far away. For instance, with 5 out of 8 steps already under your belt, you're already 62.5% of the way there. If you could just master those last 3 steps, you'd be amazed at how much quicker you start listing and selling commercial properties. If you really want to consider, well, I already know X, Y, Z, A, B, C, don't worry about those. Instead, keep a laser focus on learning these 3 key pillars. Number 1, learning the foundations of multiple property types. Number 2, valuation of commercial real estate. And number 3, sourcing buyers and sellers. Those are the 3 critical components that, when combined with a super effective game plan, if you just put in the effort, spend the next 6 months learning everything you can, your business will absolutely take off. For example, many years ago, when I finally decided to really amplify my business, I joined a coaching program. I accomplished more in the next 24 months than I had in the previous 5 years because I started focusing on the right things. My business tripled in 24 months because I started pushing on the push door instead of pulling on the push door. And it made my life so much easier. The success that came with it was just attributed to the fact that I was doing the right things at the right time. I like to say I was giving the right message to the right people at the right time. And that made all the difference in the world. And that's really what we're going to cover in Chapter 3, the foundation. Chapter 3, commercial real estate foundations. Without a foundation, you can kiss the stability of your house goodbye. The same goes for business. No foundation, no lasting success. First and most important pillar in your game plan on how to approach commercial real estate and the foundations of your business. If you think about it, building a business is no different than building a building. You can try to build the tallest structure in the world, but if you don't have the right set of plans and you don't build it on a solid foundation, sooner or later it's going to tumble. First and foremost, it's literally and figuratively a foundation because everything builds off the base of knowledge that you start with in commercial real estate. Everything comes from the plan that you set in place and build your business upon. You can find clients by dialing the phone book, but I'd rather find them from people who have already told me they want to sell or they already own homes or businesses or buildings. More work is not necessarily more better. I think the best mistake for people to make would be wasting time spinning their wheels and trying to figure out commercial real estate on their own. Everyone would love to be able to beat their chest with pride and say, I figured this all out on my own. But what winds up happening is people getting frustrated. They blow through their savings only to leave the business a year or 2 later and get a 40-hour-a-week job that they were, frankly, trying to avoid in the first place. The most expensive resource in the world is time. If you think about it, it's the only non-renewable resource. You can always go out and earn more money, but you can never get the time back that you wasted going down the wrong path. Most brokers don't make a whole lot in their first year or 2 because the majority don't have a mentor and they don't have a plan to execute on and they don't have the right information or resources. It's good to know that you're on the right path and that you're doing the right activities, but if you don't have traction, you get a little bit frustrated. You're living off your savings until things get rolling. Most people don't have more than a year or 2 of savings set aside before they start to take loans and so forth. You're trying to learn something that you've never done before while your life savings are dwindling. You're essentially betting your life savings on the hope that commercial real estate brokerage will pan out. Well, you're working 6 and 7 day weeks, all while still not knowing if what you're doing are the right activities with the highest probability of meeting your goals. That is, no doubt, the biggest mistake people make. Money going out with no money coming in. Most people's greatest fear is failure. Nobody likes to lose. I mean, I've been a broker trying to figure it out, and when I went down some wrong paths, you always have to look at the cost-benefit ratio of any venture. All too often, people go into a new line of work like commercial real estate because they see the cost benefit. They see how lucrative it can be and how much money they can make. But the biggest oversight that they fail to plan is how they're going to win. Remember, failing to plan is planning to fail. If you think about it, you are undertaking commission-only work. And even though the payoff can be huge, you still need the staying power to get to the point where you'll be making those big commission checks. And they can be very big. They can be 6 figures, even larger sometimes. As a result, most people who are taking on this endeavor don't make enough to live. They wind up depleting their savings and they decide to quit after the first year or two. Now, follow my logic here. If you're attempting to take on a tough line of work that's pretty difficult and it takes you depleting your life savings to be successful, you are essentially betting all your chips to learn this skill. The question I ask you is, are you willing to bet every single penny that you've ever worked for? If you are willing to do so, doesn't it stand to reason that you'd want to do absolutely everything in your power to ensure that the bet you made would pay off? That's what I did. I went into commission-only work. I watched my savings deplete. I struggled. Finally, I figured it out. I put the pieces together, my business took off, but in the meantime, I know what it's like to be unsure and say, okay, is this going to pay off? Is going down this wrong road going to down that road? I highly recommend that making sure that you take the steps to ensure your success in whatever endeavor it is that you go into. Putting your plan in place. Once you have the plan and the path carved out for you in your next deal, you can proceed with confidence. You're not guessing. You're not going in blindfolded, stabbing in the dark. You're only spending your time and effort with the highest probability activities and utilizing your time as efficiently and effectively as possible. You can move through the world because there's a big disconnect, especially on the commercial side of real estate, between your efforts and your results. Sometimes it can be 3, 6, 9 months, even a year between the effort you put forth on one side and seeing results on another. I had a transaction close recently, and it took me 3.5 years from the first time I prospected till I cashed the commission check. A whole lot can happen in that time, and your confidence in your process can certainly waver. The nicest thing about having a plan with a foundation in place is knowing you are on the right path. You know you're doing the right activities and headed in the right direction. The most important thing is to focus your efforts. Make sure you're going true north, because if you're just a few degrees off, you're not going to wind up someplace where you don't want to be. Your game plan acts like a compass. I mean, if Columbus had been off by just a few degrees, he would have wound up in Canada or South America in the other direction. Once you have these foundations set in place, you'll know exactly what you don't know. You won't wonder. At the very least, you'll know where you might have to fill in to round out the rest of your education, but you'll at least know which way south is, and you'll know what direction you'll have to head in so that you can continue your education and you can move your career forward. I think the biggest encouragement I'd like to leave you with is that you're not that far off. If you're heading to Spain, let's say 1 or 2 degrees of deviation to the north is going to put you in England, or 1 or 2 degrees of deviation is going to send you to Africa. The point is, you have to dial in your path, but you're not that far off. Sometimes it just takes a very small adjustment in your course and you'll be hitting where you want to. I think that's the biggest takeaway, really. Chapter 4, Common Myths and Mistakes to Avoid. Mistakes are expensive, so I try to minimize them. The first and foremost mistake is not prospecting enough. No new business means no old business. A sales pipeline is just like a water funnel. Put something in the top and something comes out the bottom. When you're talking to your prospects, if you're not putting enough new opportunities in the top of the funnel, you're never going to get enough out of the bottom. Now, the second mistake would certainly be limiting yourself to one particular property type, one geographical area, or farming only one submarket. Like I mentioned before, that comes down to an older method that people used to do, which might have worked years ago, before the age of the internet and availability of detailed information, but it no longer holds true. The third mistake is working with too many buyers or working on too many lease assignments. Those, I would say, are the top 3 mistakes commercial agents commonly make. The cost of old-style farming. Old-style farming, in air quotes, will cost you time. It'll cost you money. Like I mentioned, the most expensive resource is time. You can never, ever get that back. Frankly, you won't be seeing the results that you want. I speak from experience. I tried for years to do a farming method. I'm very diligent about doing a database and collecting data and following up with phone numbers and email and so forth. I tried and tried and tried. It wasn't until I quit farming and adjusted my course just a little bit, while still investing the same amount of effort, that the outcome changed significantly. Think about it, folks. If you are told to do what everyone else is doing, doesn't it stand to reason that you're going to get the same average results as everyone else? So you need to do something that everyone else is not doing in order to get outsized results. Not prospecting enough. Not prospecting enough is the number one mistake for a bunch of reasons. Like I mentioned before, sales are like a funnel. You put X in the top, Y comes out the bottom. In a perfect world, you'd put X in the top and X would come out the bottom. But there's always going to be some amount of fall off. I see this so much with commercial real estate agents and residential agents on that side for that matter. If you don't go out and make prospecting a part of your daily regimen, just like brushing your teeth, you wind up doing things the wrong way. Think of it this way. If you wanted to make a bottle of wine, but you only have one grape, you're never going to get enough juice out of that one to make a whole bottle. No matter how hard you squeeze, no matter how hard you twist it and turn it, it's never going to make enough. Similarly, it's like that old common turn of words, putting a square peg into a round hole. If that's the only option you have, then you're going to struggle the entire time trying to make something into something that it's not. If you think about it, the more you put into the top of the sales funnel, the more opportunity you give yourself, and the pickier you can be with whom you work with. You can see who is a higher probability client, and you can be more discerning over what types of clients you work with. You will be able to say, no, I don't want to take on this piece of business. That's a low probability client. That's a difficult person, or it's going to take too long. Prospecting diligently allows you to live in abundance. Imagine on one hand, if you were able to wake up every morning, go out looking for opportunities, and collect all the business cards of the people that you spoke to. Before long, you'd end up with a stack of 100 plus business cards, and you put that on a plate on your desk. Now, knowing that there's only 24 hours in a day, at this point, you get to choose which ones you work with, cherry picking only the best, most qualified leads. Now, contrast this with only having one business card on that same plate. You're going to have a much, much harder time. You're going to hold on to that business card for dear life. And if that person decides to do things that are not in your best interest, or they're difficult to work with, or they take too long, you have to deal with whatever comes out of that relationship. However, if you prospect every day and you create more opportunities for yourself, you're going to be able to have all the choices that you want. You'll be able to make the right decisions, not from a place of scarcity where you have to make that decision because you have a car payment or a house payment to make, but rather you have the luxury of at that point saying, what's the best thing for my business? What's going to allow me to grow? Maybe the answer to those questions is a different property type. Maybe it's a different submarket or even county. Whatever that might look like, you be able to make the right decisions for the right reasons, because you want to or you choose to, not because you have to. That would be effective prospecting in a nutshell. Limiting yourself. The second mistake I see being made would be people limiting themselves to one property type or farming a submarket. I have a real issue with this. I think it came from the right place. Years ago, people wanted to be called specialists. Now, with the advent of all the information that there is out there on the internet, on CoStar and so forth, you can learn about multiple property types relatively easily. More importantly, I think people who really wanted to continue specialization are the owners of commercial brokerage firms. Hear me out. Let's say you had 30 brokers and you're in some city that has X number of commercial properties. At some point or another, if you don't create clear-cut guidelines in terms of what properties your brokers can work with, you're going to have brokers stepping on each other's toes, saying, oh, wait, that's my area. Wait, that's my property type. I think the whole concept of creating a small geographical area or just choosing one property type is the very definition of pigeonholing yourself. Having a deep breadth of knowledge can be done, especially if you're diligent about your work and you study the market and you study the trends and so forth. There's no reason why you can't be diligent and have a high level of understanding in multiple submarkets and in multiple property types. Again, I'm sorry, not sorry, to blow the lid off it, but I think a lot of brokers and owners do that just because it avoids having their agents fighting over the same pieces of business. As I said, I used to do all these things myself, so I know from experience. In my backyard here, we had a 4% turnover rate for industrial properties. What does that mean? Only 4%, 4 out of 100 properties a year would sell in any given year. So let's say I created a relationship with Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith and Mrs. Diaz. I would need to have 100 of these relationships and nurturing them constantly to be able to make 4 sales this year. That's not very efficient. More importantly, to look at that inversely, your chances of selling any one property during any of those years, right, is 1 out of 25 in any given year. There are some people who own properties for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Oftentimes, commercial real estate is held multi-generationally. So there are reasons why people hand real estate down. There are certain tax incentives and so forth. Sometimes people own properties for 50 years. Now, I would not want to be knocking on someone's door every 3 months with coffee and donuts if they're not going to sell the property for 50 years or more. You with me? I'm going to be very old before I can make a commission check from that. And that's another reason, if you just have a relationship, the chances of you selling that building is not that great. I think it's very important to have a rapport. I think it's very important to nurture relationships. But I think it's overstated how important those relationships are when considering the pure statistical probability of transacting with that one individual. On the residential side, the average American moves every 7 to 10 years. So, there's about a 14% chance in any given year that a person's going to sell their house. It makes a lot more sense for that person. But when you have your chances 1 out of 25 in any given year as an agent, or 4% chance, I don't like those odds. Just like the example I gave earlier, I prefer to go after highly leveraged people. That means people who have a high chance of transacting in the next 3, 6, or even 12 months. For example, let's say you're a doctor. You just got out of med school and you want to help as many people as possible. Would it be more effective for you to go downtown and walk up and down Main Street and say, hey, are you sick? Hey, are you sick? Hey, are you sick? If you reach out to 4, 5, 600 people, you're going to find some people that are sick. There's no question. The law of large numbers dictates that eventually you're going to run into those people that are sick. But wouldn't it make more sense for you as a doctor if you were to sit down outside the entrance to the emergency room where all the ambulances are pulling in with people on stretchers who just got into car accidents, for instance, or people who are being admitted to the hospital, and you sit outside that door and you say, excuse me, sir, are you sick? Excuse me, ma'am, are you sick? That's the difference between the traditional method and the one that I teach. You are going after highly leveraged people, quote unquote sick people from the previous example, who have a high probability of transacting soon. The cost of too many buyers and leases. We all get the same 24 hours. That's just a fact. The question is, how effectively and how efficiently do you work within those 24 hours? Now, I'm not above working with somebody who's a buyer if I've already sold them a building. I made them, quote, homeless by selling the building that they're in. Sure, I have no problem selling them a building or doing a lease on a building that I own or that I sold for someone else. That's fine. However, if you're using that as a primary way of getting your business, frankly, there aren't enough hours in the day. The analogy that I've always heard and used is when you're dealing with sellers, the people from whom you get an exclusive right to sell their property, it's like going to the top of the mountain. For those of you that out there that are skiers or snowboarders, this example will really hit home. It's one thing to climb all the way to the top of the mountain. Working with a buyer is like climbing up the bunny hill. It's like climbing 1/10 of the way up the mountain, turning around and skiing down for a fun little ride. It might take you 30 seconds, but then you have to take off your skis or take off your snowboard, put it on your back, and huff and puff your way back up the hill to the top of the bunny hill. Dealing with sellers, on the other hand, is like walking all the way to the top of the mountain so that you can then ride down. Yes, it takes you longer, probably 3 or 4 times as long, but what happens along the way is magical. What happens along the way skiing down the mountain is that you get to pick up other business. People are calling you about 123 Main Street. It might not work for them, but then you can sell them your other listing at 234 Main Street. Or a qualified buyer is calling you about 123 Main Street, but guess what? You can refer them to an agent that you trust and make 25% when they buy something from that agent. People come to you and they say, oh wow, 123 Main Street? I have a building across the street. You obviously know a lot about this neighborhood. Let me go ahead and give you my listing to my building. Every single one of those outcomes has occurred because I made it my main focus to focus on representing sellers. It's far more efficient for the amount of time you're given. Maybe it takes 3 times longer to go out and find a listing and to prospect for sellers, but you get far more business. You experience a far bigger cumulative effect because of all the exposure you earn from working with sellers, the additional work that it gives you, and the reputation and branding that helps you build your business. It all comes together. When you're dealing with a building that you're selling, the only thing that has to happen for you to make money is someone has to buy that building. Now, sometimes another agent brings somebody, but a good part of the time, someone comes to you. They see you on LoopNet or CoStar, or they see your marketing or your email blast or what have you. They come to you. They want to buy the building directly from you. Oftentimes, when there isn't another agent involved, you wind up making twice the commission. The last time I checked, $2 is better than $1 for the same amount of work. Leasing, for the same reason, is time consuming. When you're working with buyers or people who are leasing, you have to take them and show them around, and show them around, and show them around. They like to play Goldilocks, like that children's fairy tale. They tell you, well, this one is to this one is to that. Some people decide not to buy, and then you've wasted all this time with them. Some people decide not to lease, and you'll have wasted all that time as well. There is no guarantee. And like I said, on the sales side, the only thing that has to happen is that a sale has to occur and you're compensated, whether it's half the commission or all of the commission. It just increases your probability. I like statistics because if you play the highest odds over and over and over again, you're going to wind up having the most successful business model and winning over and over and over again. Is it ever too late to correct your mistakes? It's never too late to correct your mistakes. But you do have to smack yourself on the wrist. I've heard people who, if they're trying a new behavior, they put a rubber band around their wrist to remind them, nope, don't do that. If you've already gone down these roads, you know what to do, because you've already felt the pain. You don't want to waste all your time working with people who aren't going to transact. You don't want to work in an area where there's not enough deal flow or there are too many brokers in that area. You don't want to be in a situation where there's more month left at the end of your money. It can happen, but it's never too late to course correct. It's never too late to start a new business model. If you start doing the right things the right way, your business can look entirely different in 4 to 6 months down the road. It can look entirely different with some real concerted effort and the right activities in the right places. Chapter 5, Valuation Skills. Commercial real estate is no different than any other business. We find buyers and we sell a product. We price the product, we show it to an open market, and we sell it to the highest bidder. So, knowing how to value a property properly benefits you in 2 ways. The first is that before you take a property to market, you have to know whether or not it will sell. More importantly, you have to be able to build an airtight case with the seller about why your price is correct and not theirs. 150% of the time, they will overvalue the price of their property. They could literally be Rip Van Winkle waking up from a 30-year coma, and they will still vividly wake up and name a price that's 20% over market, 30% over market. It's crazy. I call it the ugly baby syndrome. It's not the nicest way of putting it, but hear me out. Nobody thinks their baby is ugly, right? They think their baby is a little bit prettier than everyone else's. Why? Because it's their baby, right? In fact, how much prettier? About 20%. That's how much. To explain it to my students, I say, okay, this is what you need to do. It's just like a lawyer in a courtroom building a case built on facts and nothing but the facts. Our job as brokers and as agents is to make sure that we can explain those facts articulately, because in a listing presentation, there are either 2 things going on. Either 1, you are selling the owner on your pricing, or the owner is selling you on their pricing. There is no in between. If you listen to the owner, I promise you, you will not price it properly. Increase your probability of selling. The second point is, if you price the property properly, it drastically increases the probability of selling it. It also shortens the amount of time it's on the market. If not, the property will sit on the market getting little to no attention, and you'll wind up with an unhappy seller and no money in your pocket. What's worse is that you've wasted time and marketing dollars on a property that has little to no chance of selling. Think about it. As brokers and agents, all we have to sell is our time and our knowledge. So, the faster we get something sold, the sooner we get paid, the sooner we can be finding someone else to help. Imagine if I gave you a $100 bill and I asked you to go to the local shopping mall and bring me back 100 singles, and I'd give you a commission for your efforts. How hard would that be? Not too hard, right? Break a $100 bill. Fine. Now, let's take that a step further. Let's say I told you, I gave you a $100 bill and told you to bring me back 99 singles, and I'll give you a commission for your efforts. Not bad. Easy peasy. I give you $100, you bring me back 99. I give you a commission? Sure. How hard would that be? That's even easier. It'd be the easiest money you ever made. Now, suppose I gave you that same $100 bill, but told you to bring me back 105 singles. How hard would that be? Incredibly difficult. Why? Because asking $105 for a $100 bill makes no sense. How long do you think it would take for you? If I said that you think it would take you a long time, you'd be right. What's the moral of the story? You can't ask more than a property's worth and expect results. You can't let a seller sell you on their dream of getting basically $105 for a $100 bill. You with me? Even if it's only 5% above the market, you'll rarely get that property sold. They could give you a 10% commission, heck, even a 20% commission, but still, at the end of the day, no one's going to buy an overpriced property. Like I mentioned before, we all get the same 24 hours in a day, so use them wisely. Real estate professionals who use their time the most wisely, incidentally, are the most successful in the business. It is literally that simple. Honing your valuation skills. I need to explain the basics of how real estate is valued and by whom. Residential agents use what's called the comparative sales approach. They call it looking at the comps, or comparative sales. You look at the properties that have sold in the area, you compare your property to the others that have occurred and adjust for the differences in the features between the two. And does this one have a swimming pool? Does this one have an extra bathroom? Does this have a 2-car garage, 1-car garage, so forth? So if it's done properly, it can be very accurate. Another approach to valuation is what's called the replacement cost approach. Basically, if an earthquake or tornado came along and swallowed your property whole, what would it cost to replace it? It's not something that's really used by real estate professionals per se, but more in like the insurance industry. But if something caught fire and burned to the ground, you need to be able to have some means of establishing a value for it. Using the income approach. The third approach, and the one that's most used by commercial real estate professionals when determining the value of an income-producing property, is called the income approach. This is used, obviously, with an income property. You can figure out very accurately what the property is worth with just 3 pieces of information. The first one is income, the second one is expenses, and the third one is local area cap rate. Now, the value of income-producing properties is both a science and an art. The first 2 items are the science, and the third is the art. So, if you don't have a well-honed skill set in both the art and the science of commercial real estate valuation, then you'll run the risk of valuing a property improperly, aka overpricing it, and letting it sit on the market, wasting time, wasting marketing dollars, and leading to an unhappy client. You wind up looking foolish to other brokers in the business and becoming frustrated. Now, there are basically 2 actionable steps you can take here. One step would be to go to the library and read up on financial literacy, watch a bunch of YouTube videos, and try to put the pieces together. Or you could take out a loan, go back to college, and take the accounting classes needed to learn how buildings are valued. The other, or the more simpler step, is you can click on my link at the end of the book in the Your Bridge to Commercial Real Estate Sales section, watch my training, download the accompanying spreadsheet. With everything you need in one place, I can get you up and running. Chapter 6, Learning Where to Find Commercial Buyers and Sellers. Once you have a game plan and understand the foundations of commercial real estate and know how to properly value commercial properties, the final step is to know how to go out and actually find buyers and sellers and investors for your clients' properties. Commercial is quite a different animal. As a residential agent, you can literally stand outside your grocery store, say hello to enough people, pass out 100 cards, and you're likely to get some business. The average person moves every 7 years, which means that out of everyone you see, there's a 14.29% chance that they will either buy, sell, or both this year. I like those odds. Now, on the commercial side, the only people who use commercial real estate are business owners or real estate investors. On top of that, many people hold commercial properties for decades or even generations, not just years. So what you wind up doing is cutting your audience down from 14% in any given year to much, much less. You see, there has to be a strategy in place for you to be able to find these buyers and sellers. You need to be able to know the secret knock, so to speak, to get you into the clubhouse of business owners and commercial investors. I help my students build a database of all the active buyers and sellers separated by property type. Even more importantly, once they have their first property to sell, they can find out the 50 most likely buyers for any given property in any given area. I take them step by step how I built my email campaign list. I grew it from 1,000 to 10,000 investors and brokers in less than 90 days. I also show the best practices for brokers and how to locate properties directly, something that will literally double the size of your commissions when you can find both the sell side and the buy side of the transaction. I send out a little over 1 million emails a year, and I take all the insights that I've learned over testing that I did to perfect the message and close more transactions. I also practice what I preach. I show all my students everything that I do step by step in great detail. As an example, like I said, I've been sending about 1 million emails a year for the last 4 or 5 years. In doing so, I've closed 5 transactions in the fourth quarter of last year. Out of those 5 deals, I earned double commission on 4 of the 5, which means I represented both the seller and the buyer. I had both the listing and buy sides from it because I was able to find the buyers directly through my marketing efforts. I was able to literally double the commissions for each one of those sales. Suffice to say, it was a Merry Christmas. Think about it. If you spend so much time and effort getting a listing, climbing to the top of that mountain like we talked about before, why not spend a bit of extra time so you can drastically increase your chance of doubling your commission? An action step you can take right now. Here's a little cheat code for you. Every real estate agent, whether residential or commercial, should have a drip campaign in place. Whether you're putting out a weekly newsletter or you're pushing a new property to the market, a drip campaign will get you and keep you in front of an audience for pennies. In fact, the software I use is free for the first 2,000 subscribers. It's called MailChimp, and you can find it at MailChimp.com. If you're just getting started, it's a fantastic place to get going, and it's very user-friendly. If you want to build your email drip list quickly for brokers, here's what you do. Go to your local MLS, pull up a list of all the transactions that were done in your market in the last year or two. Then download a list to an Excel spreadsheet and sort the columns by agent and the number of transactions. I would recommend filtering out anyone who did less than 5 transactions in a 2-year period, or fewer than 3 transactions in a 1-year period. Then download the agent information, including their names and emails, and voila. Next thing you know, you have the most active agents in your market to upload into MailChimp. Now, people might ask, well, isn't that going to include both residential and commercial agents? Yes, there are a lot of options. But what it's going to do, it's going to include residential agents and commercial agents. But the beautiful thing about it is I can't tell you how many transactions I've done with residential agents who don't necessarily specialize in commercial, but one of their clients happens to have a business that they're looking for or looking to purchase a location for. Some say, oh, don't you just want commercial agents? Nope. In fact, I would rather have a list that includes both kinds because there's a certain magic to it. Every agent you know knows X amount of people, right? And residential agents know a lot of different people from their past clients over time. I find it very, very important for you to include residential agents even when you're selling commercial properties because they too know commercial investors and commercial business owners. Chapter 7, Growing from Regular Commercial Agent to Rockstar Agent Case Studies. In this chapter, I want you to be able to see what's being done by agents just like you. Let's talk about one of my students, Tyler. Tyler started with me right around the holidays last year, and by the time January came around, he buckled down and decided to give it his all. He researched properties the way I taught him, learned my scripts and conversational frameworks, and started dialing with them on February 1st. As of today, 5 weeks later, he has taken 4 exclusive listings worth over $5 million in 39 days. When he closes these listings, assuming he gets only 3%, which is half the fee, he'll be putting $150,000 in his pocket. And the best part is, he's only 26 years old. That young man has a very bright future ahead of him. Another student of mine named Sam earned his first commercial commission in the amount of about $40,000. I guided him through it. He studied, he went through the modules. Now he and his team have taken a handful of listings. Last conversation I had with him, he was waiting on a signature on a $1.8 million listing. If it's sold, the total commission on that would be $108,000. I taught him how to locate buyers according to the last chapter's lessons. He'll be making a $54,000 commission if he represents just the seller. There's a complete area of my course where I teach you how you can drastically improve the probability of getting a 6% fee instead of a 3% fee for your listing. In this case, $108,000 instead of $54,000. Like I mentioned, the only thing better than earning $1 for a transaction is earning $2 for the same amount of work. Sam was willing to dig into the modules. He was willing to follow instructions, to reach out to the right people, reach out to get these listings. He's been in residential for over 25 years, and he really wanted to get started and get his feet wet in commercial. Now he's built a team, he's taken multiple listings, and I just spoke to him a few days ago, and the $1.8 million listing is actually under contract now. He got it signed 2 weeks ago, found someone in the first 2 weeks doing the things I showed him how, and he'll be closing it by mid-month. It's really awesome when you see someone take the information, implement the information, and have success. Albert came to me, and he had been in part-time in residential for a while. Once coming into the program, he decided to leave his regular job and pursue commercial full-time. In his first month of prospecting, he picked up 2 exclusive listings worth over $2 million. The opportunity is out there for anyone. You just need the right guide and the right plan. By the way, 7 months later, Albert has 11 exclusive listings and he has 2 more on the way. He took 3 in 1 week. This is what's possible in a very short period of time. The only thing limiting you from the career that you want is how hard you're willing to work for it. When any residential agents come to my program and they've never sold commercial property before, I do what's called a 30-day Get Your Name Out There challenge. That consists of telling everybody you know that you're in commercial real estate and reaching out to them through a very specific step-by-step process. It's something I've honed over the years because I've been helping people to get their first win under their belt as quickly as possible. One of our newest students just came in, executed everything, and had his first listing in 14 days. Another student of mine that implemented the Get Your Name Out There challenge, he learned it in his first week coming into the course and just cashed a $62,000 check. He got 2.5% on a $2.5 million property, which is something that he helped somebody that was already in his sphere of influence get under contract and then later close. How do you do that? You don't necessarily do it by cold calling, but rather by reaching out to the people who already know, like, and trust you, right? In Cheryl's case, for example, she took my 30-day challenge to get her name out there, and she was working really hard to assemble a land deal. She got involved with a couple of buyers, and when they found a piece of land, she helped them purchase it. Then they were trying to buy the adjacent pieces of land. Guess what? There was one adjacent owner who was a holdout, and she helped these people buy, but what wound up being not 1, but 2 pieces of land. Then they couldn't close on the 3rd piece of land, so she got the listing to sell the 2 pieces of land. This is the way things multiply. She had 2 purchases, and then she turned around and had 2 listings for sale. Think about reaching out to your database of past clients. Let's say you're an agent and you've been in the market for 10 years. Over that 10-year period, you're averaging between, let's say, 10 and 20 deals. Guess what? You already have between 150 and 200 previous clients. And they all have family and friends. What I do is show people who come into the program how to leverage those relationships and what conversations they need to be having in order to get the most out of people that already know, like, and trust them to do commercial business with them. You don't have to hop on a call and cold call people necessarily. If you want to get started in commercial real estate, you just have to start closing deals with people you already know who will transact with you. The moral of the story is, for the next 30 days, if you just spent a few minutes a day reaching out to those past clients through your Facebook, LinkedIn, or mail campaign and tell them that you are working on commercial transactions now, I guarantee you'll pick up at least 1 or 2 pieces of business at minimum. For a complimentary guide on how to leverage your network step by step as a commercial broker, check out the link on my PDF saying Get Your Name Out There Challenge by going to www.crebasictraining.com/leverage-your-network. Conclusion. I hope for you that I've inspired you, at the very least help you understand that you're not as far away as you think. I'd really like you to know that with some key skills, you can learn the knowledge and then gain the confidence it takes to list and close commercial transactions and be successful in the commercial field. That's number 1. If you want to take this information, or at least learn how to find the information and take it a step further, I could help you through a strategy call. I'd like to hear where people are in their business just to see if what they're doing and what they're doing in terms of their goals and how I might be able to help them. If I can help them through my program, I'll at least point them in the right direction and give them a strategy to implement going forward. At the end of the call, they're going to have clarity over what it will take for them to reach their end goal, whether they decide to start selling some commercial properties or make a full transaction, or rather a full transition into commercial real estate. During the strategy call, we'll map out a guide of what they'll need to do and what it looks like in my program. I have a few different programs or entry points into my coaching. One of them is a membership site where they can learn the information they need to get into the listing side of commercial. It'll take them step by step and watch narrated videos, one lesson at a time. Another is a high-level program, which is more for people who are ready to take their business to the next level. By the time they get done, they will know everything they need to list and sell commercial properties and help commercial real estate owners get into commercial deals. Included in the high-level program is access to the membership site, and we already also have a weekly Q&A call. We can address any sort of questions you have, whether it's about the information on the membership site or something that happened during the course of your day, like I called the seller, they said this, where do you recommend I go from there? You can get all your questions answered on the weekly Q&A call. I also created a community. All the agents who are in my program get to interact with one another, which is really great because I see them referring business back and forth. They're learning from one another, supporting one another. It's really fantastic. I also create a private students-only Facebook group. If someone has a question and they need clarification on something in between the Tuesday night calls, they can reach me there as well. On top of all that, we have office hours built into my schedule where students can hop on my calendar and speak directly to me so that they can get any questions that they may have answered. If they have a private matter they want to discuss outside the group setting, I can certainly assist them with that. The reason I built the coaching program is that there's no reason people can't be successful in commercial real estate. I give them the hammer, the nails, the blueprint, and then I show them how to swing the hammer. After that, they have everything they need to go out and build their dream business. Your bridge to commercial real estate sales. You've taken the steps to get into the real estate brokerage business, you've gotten started, put in the hours, and even had some sale or lease transactions put together. You find that lease transactions rarely pay enough and can be very difficult to do business with because they're either looking for a property that doesn't exist or aren't willing to pay the price for the rare ones that do. At the end of the day, you aren't making the type of money that you know you're capable of. So finally, you're left wondering, how do I get sellers to list their commercial properties for sale with me? Unfortunately for many people, trying to learn to take commercial sale listings only leads to uncertainty, working longer hours, frustration, and confusion. Finding a way to crack that code means you get to have more control of your business, more consistency in your earnings, all while working less and making more. Having a plan in place to accomplish this will give you the confidence to make the move from solely a leasing or buying agent to becoming a coveted seller's agent. Here's a few ways you can get started learning how to list commercial properties. Step 1, head over to our website, crebasictraining.com/3steps, and download the 3 Missing Steps PDF to see how easy it is to get started listing commercial properties. Step 2, download our secret weapon at www.crebasictraining.com/free valuation guide to help you decode the biggest source of confusion that most agents have, how to value commercial property. Step 3, book a 15-minute breakthrough session with me so we can see how we might be able to assist you in crossing the bridge from from leasing or buyer agent to listing agent. www.crebasictraining.com/application. I know how committed you are to growing your business by learning how to list commercial properties. If you have any questions about the ideas in this book or improving your commercial sales, please email me at info@darkhorse-commercial.com or call me at 305-987-3053. I look forward to seeing you.